Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Sacred Beast deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this with you guys because this is a really awesome deck that can actually summon all three of the legendary Sacred Beasts, Raviel, Haman, and Uriah. And can even summon out their insanely powerful fusion monster, Armityle, which is a mixture of all three of the legendary Sacred Beasts. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name description in a single video, getting a signed card to mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron, along with test hands. And without further ado, guys, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing two copies of Raviel, Lord of Phantasm. So this card is a really awesome card that basically has the ability that it cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned from your hand by attributing 3 fiend monsters on your side of the field. Now, you're usually not going to summon this card this way. You have a lot of monsters in the deck that actually will special summon itself, special summon out any of your Sacred Beasts to your side of the field, ignoring their summoning conditions. But it has some really awesome added effects. That each time your opponent normal summons a monster, you can special summon a Phantasm token to your side of the field. That it's a Dark level 1, 1000 attack, and 1000 defense, but it cannot declare an attack. It also has the ability that once per turn, you can tribute a monster, and this card gains attack equal to the tributed monster's original attack until the end of this turn. So this card can get even bigger than 4000. We then play a single copy of Raviel, Lord of Phantasm, Simmering Scraper, which is actually Raviel's attack name, which is a really cool thing that they made his attack into a monster. And it's actually a hand trap because it has the ability to quick effect, discard this card to target a Raviel, Lord of Phantasms that you control, and for the rest of the turn, its attack becomes double its current attack. And also, it can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can tribute a monster to add this card back to your hand, which is a really awesome effect just to get this card back into your hand. We then play 2 copies of Haman, Lord of Striking Thunder. Now, this card is actually the monster that you're going to be using the majority of the time to summon it by its own procedure, because all you have to do to summon this card is send 3 face-up continuous spells you control to the graveyard. And it also has the ability, if this card destroys a monster at battle and sends it to the graveyard, you inflict an additional 1000 life points to your opponent, which is a really good effect just to be able to inflict additional damage to your opponent. It also has the ability that when this card is in face-up defense position, your opponent can only attack Haman. It can't attack any of your other monsters, which is really cool that this card actually protects all of your other weaker monsters, because a lot of monsters in this deck actually have 0 attack and 0 defense. We then play a single copy of Uriah. Uriah is a very interesting one because he has 0 attack and 0 defense. But you have to send 3 face-up continuous traps from your side of the field to the graveyard to special summon this card. And then it's also a Night Beam where you can actually target a face-down spell or trap on your opponent's side of the field and instantly banish that card or destroy that card. But neither player can activate spells or traps in response to this card's activation. And this card gains attack points equal to the number of continuous traps that you have in your graveyard, which can actually quite a few because we play quite a few continuous traps in this deck. We then play 3 copies of Dark Summoning Beast, which Dark Summoning Beast has the ability to contribute this card to special summon either any of the Sacred Beast monsters to your side of the field, and also from your hand or deck. So you basically can special summon out your copies of your Raviel, Haman, or Uriah from your hand or deck just by attributing this card. It also has the ability that you can banish this card from the graveyard to add a Uriah, Haman, or Raviel from your deck to your hand. But the turn that you activate the tribute effect to special summon them out from the hand or deck, you can't declare an attack, which is the only real downside to this card. We then play 3 copies of Dark Beckoning Beast. Dark Beckoning Beast has the ability that when this card is normal or special summon, or when it's ever normal summon, you get to add a Uriah, Haman, or Raviel, or a card that specifically lists them in its text from your deck to your hand. And also it gives you an additional normal summoner set of a fiend monster that has 0 attack and defense. This card is an absolute 3-of on the deck because it helps out the deck a lot, giving you additional normal summon because it can count as the tribute fodder for your Dark Summoning Beast, and also it can search out a bunch of cards out of the deck. We then play 3 copies of Chaos Summoning Beast. Chaos Summoning Beast is a very powerful card in the deck that has the ability that you can tribute this card to special summon out a copy of either Uriah, Haman, or Raviel from your hand, ignoring their summoning conditions. And you can also banish this card from the graveyard to add the field spell Fallen Paradise from your deck to your hand, which is a awesome field spell for this deck and helps out the deck a lot. We then play a single copy of Chaos Core, which is a fantastic defensive card for this deck and something that I've actually included from my previous list. I haven't played this card in the deck before, but it's a very interesting defensive card because it has the ability that when either player activates a card or effect that targets this card, or when your opponent targets this card for an attack, quick effect, you can send 1 each of your Uriah, Haman, and Raviel from your hand or deck to the graveyard. And if you do, you place a Phantasm counter on this card for each card sent to the graveyard. And if you place at least one, you take no battle damage this turn. And you can only use the effect of this card once per turn. And if this card would be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can remove one Phantasm counter from this card instead. This card helps out a lot because it is a 0 attack, 0 defense fiend monster, and it can get your copies of your Human, Raviel, and Uriah into the graveyard. We then play for the final monster, playing a single copy of Exodios, the Ultimate Forbidden Lord, because it is a level 10 monster that can special summon itself out to your side of the field by shuffling all the monsters in your graveyard back into the deck, which is really good because it can help us make some rank 10s in the actual deck. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Foolish Burial because a lot of our monsters actually thrive in the graveyard, like our copies of our Dark Summoning Beast can actually banish themselves from the graveyard to add any of our Sacred Beasts that we want to our hand. We then play a single copy of Dimension Fusion Destruction. This card is the card that you're going to use to actually summon Armatile by using your Sacred Beast monster. So this card is very important and actually comes in very handy because you can banish from your hand and or graveyard the materials to actually summon Armatile, which is a really awesome effect. We then play two copies of Cerulean Skyfire. Cerulean Skyfire is a powerful card in this deck because it has the ability to special summon Haman. You can also use face down spell cards you control, and once per turn, when you control an attack position Haman, you can negate any spell or trap effect that activated by your opponent, then choose one Haman, Lord of Striking Thunder you control, and to defense position. You change it to defense position, and if face up Uriah, Lord of Searing Flame, Haman, Strike of Thunder, or Raviel, you control leaves the field, you take no damage for the rest of the turn, which is a really good effect to just be able to basically protect you if they do out one of your Sacred Beasts. We then play a single copy of 1 for 1 in the deck because 1 for 1 is a very powerful card in the deck to help you get out your copy of your Chaos Summoning Beast to your side of the field. We play two copies of Fallen Paradise. Fallen Paradise helps out the deck a lot as well because it has the ability that your opponent cannot target any of your Sacred Beast monsters or Armatile in your monster zone with card effects, and also those monsters cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, so they have to destroy them by battle, which is really cool because a lot of them are really big monsters. And also it has the ability to control any of the Sacred Beasts or an Armatile, then once per turn you can draw 2 additional cards, which basically turns this card into a Pot of Greed, which is an insanely powerful field spell. We then play 3 copies of Opening of the Spirit Gates. Opening of the Spirit Gates is a crazy good continuous spell that's actually a searcher that has the ability when it's activated that you can add any of the Sacred Beasts from your deck to your hand, or a card that specifically lists that's a monster. You can add a monster that specifically lists them in its text from your deck to your hand. And also has the ability once per turn you can discard a card to special summon a fiend monster with 0 attack or defense from your graveyard, and then once per turn if you control a level 10 monster, then you can add a continuous spell from your graveyard to your hand, which is a really good card effect, and it's really awesome for the lore of this deck that these are actually the Spirit Gates that the main characters of GX were trying to protect from actually unlocking the Sacred Beasts. We then play 2 copies of Pot of Desires because there's nothing in the deck that if you truly banish all 3 copies of it, you're going to be totally out for the game, and you play a lot of 3-ofs in this deck, so this card is really good in the deck to play as a 2-of. We then play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness because a lot of the cards that we play in the deck are dark, so this card is really good to be able to basically draw additional cards. You have a lot of draw cards in this deck from Fallen Paradise, Allure of Darkness, and even Pot of Desires. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing a single copy of Skill Drain. Skill Drain is very powerful in this deck because even at the end of the day, we have 4,000 attack point monsters, even if their effects are negated. So this card is a very powerful card to be able to activate, and it hurts the opponent a lot more than it hurts us. 1 copy of Hyper Blaze. Hyper Blaze is the attack for our Uriah, and it has the ability to special summon Uriah. You can also use face down traps you control. And once per battle, when an attack is declared involving your Uriah, then you can send 1 trap card from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and its attack becomes the total number of traps on the field and in the graveyard times 1,000, which essentially doubles the attack of your Uriah for the rest of the turn. And you can also discard a card to add from your hand, or to add to your hand, or special summon a Uriah, Haman, or Raviel from your graveyard, ignoring its summoning condition. So this card is a very powerful card to play as a 1-of in the deck. We then play 3 copies of Crackdown. Crackdown is a very powerful card in the deck, and the card that I actually changed out Ash Blossoms for from other builds. And this card is a really cool card because it has the ability to target an opponent's monster that they control and take control of that monster, which can really interrupt the opponent if they're trying to make a monster that's bigger than one of your Sacred Beasts. And while you control that monster, it cannot attack or activate its effects. And then when this card leaves the field, when that monster leaves the field, destroy this card. Now, the reason I actually put this card at 3 in this deck is because of the next card, which is Awakening of the Sacred Beast. Now, this card has a very interesting final effect that once per turn, if you control a level 10 monster, you can add a continuous trap from your graveyard to your hand. So any of these cards on the top row that are on the graveyard, you can actually bring them back if you control a level 10 monster. Now, this card has effects based on the Sacred Beast that you control. If you control 1 Sacred Beast, each time your opponent normal summons a monster or special summons a monster, you gain life points equal to the monster they summon's attack. If you have 2 or more Sacred Beasts that you control with different names, then you can negate the effects of all monsters your opponent controls. And if you have 3 or more Sacred Beasts, any monster sent to your opponent's graveyard is banished instead. This card is absolutely crazy and a must of 3 of in this deck. It is such a powerful card that has some really insane effects. It's basically a copy of Skill Drain if you have 2 Sacred Beasts on the field and you just need to play 3 copies of this card because it is so good in this deck. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're playing a single copy of Armitile. Armitile is really good in the deck because it has the ability that basically it goes to 10,000 during your turn and it cannot be destroyed by battle, which is a really awesome effect to basically summon a 10,000 attack point beat stick, but it does go back down to 0/0 during your opponent's turn, but it can't be destroyed by battle, which is not that big of a deal for this particular monster. We then play a single copy of Armitile, the Chaos Phantom, Phantom of Fury. This card is an insanely powerful card that has the ability. This card becomes Armitile while on the field, and then once per turn during your main phase, you can give control of this card to your opponent, and then once per turn during the end phase of the same turn, you can activate the effect that if this card was changed control, you banish all cards that they control. So basically, you can fusion summon into this card first, and then once you do, give it to your opponent, and then at the end phase of the turn that you summoned it, you can then summon out Armitile and banish everything that they control, which is an insanely powerful effect, which is just really, really cool. We then play a single copy of Juggernaut Libby, because Juggernaut Libby can do a lot of damage and just basically OTK your opponent. Number 81, because it can become immune to everything, and a single copy of our Gustav Max, because it can do 2,000 burn damage. One copy of number 35, because the difference between our life points and our opponent's life points, our monsters gain its attack. And with the copies of the Awakening of the Sacred Beast letting us gain so many life points, this card is actually insane in the deck, like Awakening of the Sacred Beast, because this card is going to give us our monsters even greater attack points. I've gotten my monsters easily up to 20,000 attack points each because of this card and Awakening of the Sacred Beast. Play a single copy of AA Zeus, because AA Zeus board wipes and is a powerful card, especially with all the XZ monsters we're playing. For the Link monsters, we're playing a single copy of Access Code. You'll rarely go into the Access Code, but it's there just in case you need it. If you want to change it out for Boil Sword, you totally can. One copy of Unicorn, because it spins stuff. Phoenix, because it pops spells and traps. Cerberus, because it pops monsters. A single copy of Pentastag, because it lets our monsters do piercing damage, which this card is absolutely insane. If it points to those monsters, IP Masquerena, because it shuffles actually lets us link summon into a copy of Unicorn, which lets us shuffle monsters back into the deck that are problematic against us. A copy of Verte Anaconda, because you can actually use it with the fusion spell in the deck to summon our copy of our Armitiles, and a single copy of Alamirage, because all of our monsters that are the Summoning Beast and the Beckoning Beast monsters have 0 attack that you can actually link into this card, and it's very helpful to get them into the graveyard because a lot of them have banish effects that you can then search additional cards. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed. It's a really awesome deck to play around with, and it's really cool to be able to actually summon out cards like Armitile that look a lot like the Egyptian God cards, which is just really awesome. I love the way this deck actually plays. It summons out consistently all of these humongous monsters and can control the board with cards like the Awakening of the Sacred Beast and all those fantastic cards in this deck. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.